The Lewis Hamilton Ferrari era is here, and his first test has attracted a lot of attention, which is a good thing for me, Scott Mitchell-Malm, and John Noble to get into in what is usually a quiet time in pre-season. Hamilton's test all started at 9:16 a.m. at Fiorano, Ferrari's test track near its Maranello base. A foggy morning, a wet track, Hamilton wheeled out the 2023 car for the first time and gave the fans a little wave as he did so. So he was clearly savouring the moment, but John, it was serious business, so what did we learn today?
Well, we learned that there's massive hype around Lewis. The fans packed that overpass that's near the circuit. I think people there have said they've not seen anything like that for years, bigger than kind of Vettel, Alonso. You're kind of going back to the Schumacher time for there to be as much hype. And I think we learned that there's still a lot for Lewis to learn. We did 30 laps today. It was basically split up into kind of 3 stints, but it was damp, it was foggy, the rain came down at lunchtime. So today was more about understanding kind of some car characteristics. There were a few lockups, understanding kind of how his relationship will be with the team, understanding, what it feels like to be a Ferrari driver. And I think a lot of emotions today. And there's that beautiful photo we had of Lewis and his mum in the background when he went down to see the fans today. So I think it's a very happy Lewis Hamilton tonight.
Yeah, he's been basically ticking off a load of to-do things on his list where he needs to basically get acclimatised to the Ferrari way of working. That's within the team and also inside the car proper. But there's a real new era feeling about this, right down to the new yellow helmet that Hamilton was sporting, and a lot of raw and genuine enthusiasm as well. Some people, I think, don't quite buy into why it matters that a person turned up at a factory a couple of days ago and then a person's driving a 2-year-old car, but there's a lot more to it than this. We actually invited members of the Race Members Club on our Patreon to submit their questions about Hamilton and Ferrari to mark his first test because it is such a significant occasion. And we're also doing podcasts about Hamilton's start to life at Ferrari too. That'll include a members only podcast dedicated to the questions we received. Obviously, the test and the initial meetings at Maranello are all about Hamilton's adjustment to Ferrari, but the other side of it is Ferrari's adjustment to him, specifically the fans. John, you've already talked about them already and the initial kind of support that Lewis had. They were out in force at Maranello earlier this week, not just Fiorano. Duncan Bettram asks, how do you think the Tifosi will take to Lewis?
Hugely well, I think. I was watching a bit of footage earlier on from Sky Italia. They were up on that embankment where I think all the media were limited to today, and there was huge enthusiasm for Lewis. Talk of his 8th championship, bringing the title back to Maranello. I think there's a massive interest in this story, and I think it's maybe been helped also a little bit by the fact there's been kind of uncertainty and intrigue about when this first test would be. If we knew back in December it would definitely be at this date, this time, perhaps wouldn't have had the interest as this kind of clouded uncertainty. When's his first day at Maranello? When's the first test? It all played out in a beautiful fashion.
And Lewis is first of all very good at saying the right things to fans, but he's also very, I think, sincere when he takes in and savours a moment like this. So the way that he engages with the Tifosi will go a long way. We know that he's cultivated this enormously strong and intense and passionate following with Team LH. Team LH times Tifosi is going to be even more formidable a support base. I wouldn't want to get on the wrong side of that too often online. Lewis did actually mark the occasion. There's a quote from him in Ferrari's press release, which is actually quite nice. He mentioned, he said it had been awe-inspiring to witness the support of being a Ferrari driver firsthand. I said you can't help but be energised by it. If you want the chance to be part of our coverage in the future like this on big stories, make sure you join the Race Members Club. You can also get early access to a lot of our F1 analysis and YouTube videos. As we're releasing our videos first on Patreon as much as we can, we're also sharing select articles like Mark Hughes' take on whether Hamilton will have an unhappy Ferrari fate like Fernando Alonso and Sebastian Vettel. If you want to join, just search for The Race on Patreon. We can actually come to another Members Club question now, John. A little bit of a segue. Lewis should have at least one more day in the 2023 car at Barcelona at the end of the month. That will be much more useful as it's much more representative than Fiorano as a circuit, and he's also got the initial acclimatization stuff out of the way. It looked like Ferrari were being very deliberate, managing the mileage, limiting it to all that was necessary today because there are restrictions on what you can do with your race drivers now, even when you're driving older cars. So save as much as possible for Barcelona. Peter Selecki asked, from a technical or feedback point of view, is there any real value for the driver and team when testing an old car? Would it not be better to only try the new car in the simulator?
I think there is value to it. It's a new car concept for Lewis. It's a new engine as well. We mustn't forget Lewis has driven nothing other than Mercedes power units for his entire F1 career. The energy deployment, the kind of power curve, all those characteristics are different. So there are elements today that he needs to understand, and you can't get from a simulator. I mean, simulators are great now, but they're not perfect. So we saw him today. You know, those lockups showing he was pushing a bit, trying to understand what those limits are under braking. We saw him using DRS as well, get some feel. He did some practice starts. You know, you can feel yourself in the car, the steering wheel controls, the interaction with the engineers. I think there's lots of elements you can get from a car that aren't just about performance. Because today wasn't about performance. Today wasn't about going out and smashing the lap record. Barcelona will be absolutely critical. And Ferrari were obviously very mindful that we need to save mileage. This is why they weren't too unhappy that it was just 30 laps, I think about 90 kilometres today. Save it more for Barcelona, because Barcelona will be more about understanding the car, understand the limits, and just pushing on a little bit.
They even gave, obviously, Charles Leclerc the chance to blow off the cobwebs as well. He didn't do as many laps as Lewis did. But again, keeping that to a minimum, which was very obviously deliberate. I'm fairly confident that if Hamilton did no running in an old car, turned up to Bahrain, did 1.5 days of testing, and then went to Australia, he's still doing pretty well on that weekend. But realistically, 2-3 tenths off Leclerc would be a good job in those circumstances, and probably still be competitive enough. He'd be closer in the races, I'm sure. But when you're trying to fight at the front in Formula One, which is exactly what Hamilton's doing, this isn't just a big payday or just career bucket list thing to tick off. He is going there to be competitive and to try and win his 8th title, ideally more if he sticks around for longer, and end the Ferrari title drought. It's all about fine margins, and F1 is a place where you often hear marginal gains being talked about. That's what Hamilton's chasing in this. Whatever Ferrari's put together in terms of a program, it is still limited, and there is only 3 days in Bahrain which he will split with Leclerc. So, John, realistically, how ready do you think Hamilton can be by Australia in the start of the season?
I think he'll be ready enough, but I don't think we should expect too much of him too quickly. F1 is so competitive these days, and absolutely critical these days to kind of nail those qualifying laps, find that peak of grip with the tyres, the peak tyre management. This is a thing that will only come over time. I think he can get on the pace much easier in races, and we've seen that last year. And a lot will come down to what this car's like. Is it a car that's going to suit his driving style? Is he going to still struggle again with those brake lockups and those kind of issues on corner entry that hurt him so much at Mercedes? Or is it going to something that's going to flourish him, excite him, and then he can push on and get to the limit quicker? I think it'll take time, but I don't think we're talking about half a season. I think maybe the first few flyaways just to get himself up to speed, understand the tyre characteristics, what he needs to extract the best out of the team, then he'll get on with it.
If it did take him half a season or more to adjust, then the answer to this question would probably be a lot easier. We'll finish on a simple but big question, which we asked our YouTube followers before Hamilton's test began. We kicked this off, and as we record this right now, it's had more than 15,000 votes, with 56% saying he can win a title at Ferrari. That is what we asked. So not an emphatic victory. That means 44% think that Hamilton won't win a title with Ferrari. But John, are the people that voted in favour of him winning the title right, and will it be down to the car more than driver?
I think he can win it. But I don't think we should anticipate a stunning, hit the ground running and smash out the world title in 25. I think there will be time, and Leclerc performed brilliantly last year, probably going to perform just as well this season. But as we go into 26, Lewis will have a full season behind him, will understand the team, understand the tyres, be fully ingrained in that 26 project. And I think that will be the real opportunity for him to shine. And then, of course, it's down to the Ferrari designers. Can they come up with a car that can beat Red Bull, beat McLaren, beat Mercedes, and even someone like Aston Martin with Adrian Newey? That'll be the deciding factor, really, in terms of what Lewis can achieve at Ferrari.